Good morning / afternoon to everyone and welcome to our latest legality webinar. As a few more folks join in, I'll just lay down a few ground rules. We'll take questions at the end in an open question and answer session where we'll give you mic access to ask questions. But if you have any questions midway, please do drop it in the Q&A box below. We answer all questions during the session and send you a written set of answers after the webinar by say Monday end of day. And yes, along with that written set of question and answer, we will also be sending across a recording of this webinar by end of day on Monday. So just brief introduction. I'm Aditya, Head of Marketing at Legality. I'm joined today by Shubhesh, who leads our product marketing efforts. And we'll also be joined later by Anshul, a Senior Product Manager at Legality. In today's webinar, we'll be doing a dive into digital stamping or eStamping as it is sometimes colloquially called, and how to run an eStamp process at scale by avoiding 5 common pitfalls that we see, right? The agenda and structure is simple. For the first 25 minutes, I will run through each of the common pitfalls as well as discussing how to avoid them. And then for 15 minutes, we'll show you a demo of Legality's BharatStamp solution, both our in-house stamping solution as well as a demo of our partnership with NeSL. And then we'll be done in about 35 to 40 minutes, after which we'll do an open Q&A. So without further ado, let's begin. So brief context, right? And this is something you all know. Companies that want to shift to paperless paperless agreements cannot do so without proper digital stamping in place, right? And that is why digital stamping is a topic that everyone seems to take a great interest in. We're doing this webinar after receiving hundreds of questions in every other webinar that we do about stamping, right? So it's just not possible to run a paperless agreement process without a scalable digital stamping system in place. Over the past 7 years, since we launched digital stamping on Legality, we've grown into India's largest private digital stamping network. We've digitized more than 20 million stamps for over 500 large enterprises across 31 states and union territories. It is a full stack digital stamping system with both our state-of-the-art in-house system as well as a fruitful and easy to integrate partnership with NeSL. We'll be showing you how this works towards the end of the webinar, but I wanted to show this slide to you right now because this is what makes us qualified to do this webinar, right? What I'm going to tell you in this webinar is not based on theory, but through learnings from the ground over the past 7 years. Because over these years, many companies have come to us after having tried or evaluated an eStamp solution before. But the reason they still come to us is because this trial or evaluation has failed to actually deliver a scalable eStamp system for that company, right? And in our experience, there have been 5 common reasons we've seen eStamping fail at scale, right? First being that stamping process technically works, but it's not compliant with Indian law. The second is that e-stamping faces severe outages during month ends. Third is that companies often delay their NeSL go live because of 3 to 4 states. Fourth is that stamp paper gets wasted like if the signer drops off, right? Leading to revenue leakage in the digital stamping process. And fifth, a niche subset of stamping is that they have a DPN system and revenue stamps are still physical. So they have their DPN leg in a physical journey, right? Not all of these reasons, of course, apply all the time. But these are 5 possible reasons that we've seen why companies still retain a physical stamping process, right? Now, if you use NeSL primarily, most of this will not apply to you, right? There's probably the third point which applies to some of you. But if you use NeSL, this webinar will be slightly less relevant for you because NeSL offers a full end-to-end on-the-fly digital stamping. We have a partnership with them, which we'll show you a demo with, where you can avail of this service through NeSL, right? So most of these problems that we've seen do not occur with the NeSL process. They occur with a non-NeSL or a private digital stamping process that a lot of players offer, right? So now let's dive into each of these one by one. First reason, and this is probably the most serious reason, is that stamping process is not compliant, right? And it's the most serious because if the stamping is not compliant, the entire process is invalidated, right? There's no concept. People often ask us, Are you more compliant? Are you less compliant? There's no such concept of more compliant or less compliant when it comes to stamping. Compliance is a simple yes or no switch, right? So what a lot of digital stamping APIs do is they show you in demos magic on the front end, right? You toggle on stamping, they put party names and seem to on the fly affix digital stamps on agreements. And honestly, like this does feel magical, right? Suddenly the stamping happening on screen. Unfortunately, just this tech magic is not enough for stamping, right? There's a common belief out there that, like other digital processes, digital stamping is simply a matter to be solved by a API. Like you have a physical stamping process, you introduce a digital stamping API, and boom, you have a digital stamping process. This on screen is simply not true, right? Because stamping, first and foremost, is not a technical process, right? So yes, you do need technology like to do it digitally, but at its core, stamping is actually a legal process, right? With specific legal requirements prescribed by law. Technology cannot override these legal requirements. It can only facilitate these legal requirements, right? But what a lot of digital stamping APIs out there do is treat stamping and digital stamping purely as a tech problem and override the actual law. So what is the actual law? There are 5 legal requirements under Indian law for a compliant digital stamping process, right? One, there must be legally compliant defacement of the stamp paper before it is digitized. Two, first party name should appear on the stamp paper. Three, there should be a clear indication of the stamp being used for a specific document. And by this, I don't mean simply that, oh, this stamp is used for loan agreements. There must be a specific connection that this stamp paper, like here, is used for this specific loan agreement and no other loan agreement, right? 4, stamp papers must be received from government authorized vendors, or if the provider themselves is generating it, they must have requisite state government authorization, right? NeSL, for example, generates stamps because it has this requisite authorization from individual state governments, right? Fifth, this is under the IT Act. This is a requirement under the IT Act. The digital stamp paper that you see that's affixed to the digital agreement must be identical in visual appearance to the corresponding physical copy. There should be no discrepancy. So going back to what digital stamping APIs do when they show you the tech magic is there is like great tech involved, but is there a corresponding legal architecture behind it? And we've seen 3 primary types of non-compliance. Let's go through them one by one, right? The first one is where the digital stamping solution generates their own receipt instead of an actual stamp paper, right? So what they do is what I'm showing you on screen, right? When you actually do on-the-fly stamping, what is being affixed is not the stamp paper, but a receipt with the backing of the private stamping solution, where the stamp paper is then sent later, right? The actual stamp paper, not at the moment the transaction is happening. So there's 2 reasons this is problematic. One is the stamp receipt actually affixed on the digital agreement is not an actual stamp paper recognized by the government, which is a violation of stamping law. And 2, even if, yes, in the process later a stamp paper comes, right, an actual stamp paper is still being purchased, the digital agreement has the receipt, which is a discrepancy, right? There's a difference between what is there in the digital agreement versus what is there physically, which is the actual stamp paper, right? So that's the receipt. The second violation that we've seen, much less common, thankfully, but we've seen it, so watch out, is where the stamping provider does not make a receipt, but instead tries to create something that looks exactly like a stamp paper, even if it is not, right? We were once signing an agreement with a company to switch over to us, and they used their previous stamping service to generate the stamp for this, right? Because obviously they had not switched over to us yet, right? So on the face of it, on screen, everything here looks fine, right? It's a stamp paper. Look, it's like from a valid state government, and even the actual state emblem is there, right? When we received this, we did some digging and went to the SHCIL website. So SHCIL on their website provides a way to access the eStamp, original eStamp online, right? So the one on the right is what we got from the SHCIL website, the actual stamp. The one on the left is what we got from the stamping provider, right? Once you see them side by side, you realize immediately, right? The title is different. The stamping provider has actually inserted an emblem that's not there. The stamping provider has put a new field, purpose of document, which is not there in the original stamp. where it just says property description. The second party in the actual stamp is a generic title. That's not the issue there, right? You can put a second party as a generic title. But the one we received actually has our name, right? There's a clear discrepancy here. Whereas the stamp actually just has one single truth in copy, right? So essentially, what the stamp provider has done is they were purchasing a correct stamp paper from SHCIL, but they were modifying it for the digital version and creating their own version to affix on the digital agreement, right? One, this is obviously a discrepancy, right? As we said, the digital must be identical to the physical. Two, this is of course illegal, right? Private entities cannot pass off their own creations as stamp paper unless they actually have permission from a state government that, hey, you can create stamp paper, right? So watch out for this. This is rare. I don't think this is prevalent practice anymore, but we have seen this in the past. So it's just something you need to watch out for. The third violation, which seems like the least problematic, but has a small violation which renders it invalid. This is where the provider purchases the correct stamp paper, but they digitally deface the stamp paper, right? So they scan the stamp paper that they purchase for you and they digitally deface it. What we mean by that is the digital version will have a legend on it, but the actual physical copy that they send you later will not have this legend on it, right? So here they've shown you like a digital version of the actual stamp, but because the defacement has happened digitally, the digital and physical versions don't correspond, which is also a clear violation of one of the five requirements, right? So if we compare the stamping methods to our five legal requirements, we find that they violate four out of the five. We'll share this checklist with you. You can use it to audit any stamping process that you evaluate for legal compliance. And again, note, if you use NeSL for your stamping and you're only using NeSL, you don't actually need to bother with this list, right? Because NeSL is fully valid and legal because they are specifically authorized by the state governments of the states they operate in. So this legal compliance section, most of this webinar actually, if you're using exclusively using NeSL, you can actually switch off and just wait till the demo. Small plug also before we move on to the next step. We've used these five legal requirements like when building BharatStamp. So now we're done with the first mistake. And honestly, that was the biggest mistake. I see some hands raised. So we will take questions at the end. We just have about maybe 7 to 8 minutes left. Let's cover the remaining four, right? So legal compliance took some time to get into. The rest won't take as much time. They are slightly more basic than the nuances of legal compliance. So the second mistake or roadblock to successful stamping is frequent downtime at month end. A lot of people who face this problem will not actually know they have a stamping roadblock because we often encounter companies that say, hey, look, we have a digital stamping process successful and live already. Yet when we poke them further, they admit that they face downtime and outage during month end, which is actually a contradiction, right? Because for any other tech process, would you accept this level of downtime every month? Like, for example, if you had a payments process and it was down 1/5 or 1/6 of the time, right? Every few days, every month, and your payments process is down. Would you then say that I have a successful payment process running? You really wouldn't, right? Yet we often hear this tolerance with stamping because people, when they have such a system, just assume that, look, if I want to do it digitally, this is the trade-off that I will face is downtime at month end. It doesn't really have to be this way, right? You can just not ensure this uptime, and we'll show you how that works in the demo. So that's 2 down, 3 to go. The third roadblock for lenders is for lenders that specifically use NeSL, right? NeSL has been game changing for lenders, offering on the fly digital stamping in real time, right? With no inventory needed. So there's no actual corresponding physical copy. This is first in India and so far only in India, like the only one in India doing this. And over the past few years, NeSL has rapidly covered most key states in India, right? So for most lenders, it's actually zero issue. Just use NeSL. The webinar is not that relevant for you if you do. However, NeSL is still working on adding certain states, right? And we are confident this is going to happen in the near future, right? As it has happened with previous states. But many lenders, when we actually approach them for an NeSL implementation, say that I am a pan-India organization. I operate in these 4 states also. So I want to wait for NeSL to cover these 4 states here also before doing my implementation, right? I'll devote tech resources to this only when like I can do pan-India live. right? And as a result, what they do is they say no, they stick with physical stamping and postpone their NESL implementation. It doesn't have to be this way, right? What we are recommending for many lenders is look, use NESL across all your key states because NESL is available in these states, and use our in-house stamping system or any other system that you want to use as backup for the states where NESL is currently not present, right? As soon as NESL goes live in these states, we will notify you and you can switch over. But fundamentally, the key takeaway from this is do not stick to physical stamping and delay your NESL implementation simply because of a temporary gap in 3 to 4 states. Right. So that's the third reason. Fourth reason, and this is a big operational hurdle to stamping, which increases costs, is stamp wastage. Right. What do we mean by this? Right. So in any digital flow, like it's just unavoidable no matter how many precautions you take, there are bound to be some drop offs, right? These can seem very innocuous. So let's say you send a signer an e-sign link. They lose it in their SMS inbox, like they just don't see it. They go about their life and the link expires, right? So you resend the link after it expires, right? A few days later, you realize, okay, the link is expired. I resend the link. It's very common in digital flows for some cases to do this second transaction. But in some stamping systems, what happens is the stamp is consumed upon generation, right? So even if the signer drops off, the stamp paper you still spend on the stamp paper, right? So when building a system, try to ensure that if the signer drops off, the stamp gets put back in the inventory. It's a simple thing to evaluate. It might not always be possible. This is a leakage that happens in some cases. And the final point we'll be covering, quite niche and not strictly related to the type of stamping that we've been talking about, is revenue stamping, right? So this section is relevant if you use DPNs for your lending or for any other document where revenue stamp is affixed, right? So till very recently for such flows, lenders used to build great digital flows for the entire loan journey. But the flow for the DPN used to then be physical, right? Because revenue stamps were physical. We are helping companies solve this with India's first digital revenue stamp flow. So if you have a DPN or any other document with revenue stamp, you don't actually need that leg to be physical. You can integrate it into the paperless leg, right? We'll show you in the demo. Simply use our revenue stamping module, which we will show you in the demo. So that is the 5 reasons. We will cover a summary of these 5 reasons and a checklist. But before that, we'll show you a demo of our stamping system. And after that, we'll sum up everything and then we'll go into the open Q&A. I noticed some people had their hands raised. Please do ask your question in the Q&A. We will take it up or wait till the end. Maybe in the next 10-15 minutes, we'll start the open Q&A and we'll give you mic access. So I'll hand it over to Shubhesh to show you the demo of Legality BharatStamp. And Anshu will also join us to show you how our NESL module also works, right? So we actually give you an end-to-end on how digital stamping works.
Thanks a lot for that, Aditya. I hope everyone can hear me. I'll just share my screen. Is it visible? So I'll just log in into my legality sandbox before we proceed. Yeah. Okay. So we spoke about a lot of mistakes that happen, a lot of reasons why e-stamping fails. Now I'm going to show you two ways how we are fixing those mistakes. One, we are in-house stamping, and second part of this demo would be the NESL stamping and how to use NESL via legality that Anshul is going to cover in like next 5 to 10 minutes when I hand it over to her. Let's say you first step to doing stamping via legality is to just go to a stamp dashboard. This is the central dashboard which you'll have to access, and this is like a central repository of everything you do on stamping. You won't have to manage stamping for each branch. You won't have to speak with hundreds of people you might be speaking to right now to keep a track of what stamps are being used. You won't have to manage separate repositories. Everything happens via single dashboard. So if you'll see, some stamps are already available, which I've previously added to my sandbox. But how do you create these stamp series, like, or rather stamps that you want to use? It's a very simple thing. You just click on this create and you can create stamp series for any state. So let's say I want to do stamping in Karnataka. for 500 rupees stamp. So I'll just enter that name. I'll select the state I want to do it in. I'll enter the first party name. I'll enter the second party name, article code, basically every detail you need for the stamp to be procured, plus the address where you want us to deliver the physical stamp. So once this is done, the stamp series, we're going to start that procurement. And once the procurement is done, that stamp is going to be available in this stamp series repository. So let's take this West Bengal stamp series for example. And if you can see, this is a series that I've already added to my sandbox. For each series, you'll get a detailed view of what's going on, like how many have been used, how many have been reserved for, or documents which have gone out, how many stamps that have procured which have expired, how many documents that it was affixed to which were blocked, and how many that are currently pending with me that I can currently use. And let's say you don't have any used stamps or unused stamps. I'll show you an example. So this one, for example, this Delhi one, it has 0 unused stamps. So there's no way for me to use a Delhi stamp. I will need to purchase new stamps. It's very simple. All you need to do is click on this purchase, and you see denomination, current balance that you have, and what was the last order that I put in for this. This gives you an idea. Last time I procured this many stamps, it lasted me this many number of months, weeks, years, whatever. So in a similar way, you can just put in that detail. So let's say 50 and just click on purchase. Once you do this and you just make the payment and confirm your order. I'll go back to this. Once your order has been confirmed, all procurement related activity you're going to see in this panel that you see right now, where no active procurements currently are shown, because this is a sandbox, which is why it says no active procurements. But if you're using a legality prod account, you will get every single detail related to stamp series procurement right in this panel. And if you want to see any information about that stamp or even change some information for that stamp, you can do it from the same interface. Now that's just procuring stamps and buying new stamps. So how do you use these stamps? But before I go there, I wanted to show you another thing, which are the digital revenue stamps, which Aditya just touched upon. And so even for that, you can prepare the stamp series. And if you'll see, it's like a one denomination, all states revenue stamps. Article code for this is DPN and all. It works the same way. Once you have 0 unused stamps or you have hit the minimum limit of stamps when you need to procure, you just purchase, and then you can go ahead and purchase your digital revenue stamps as well. And this is just for our in-house stamping. Let's say you're using NeSL, then you don't need to worry about any of this procurement. All you need to do is manage a separate wallet with them, and money will keep getting deducted for each stamp as it is generated on the fly. How it's done, just wait for 5 more minutes and Anshul is going to show you that. Another thing I wanted to show you, sometimes you have to pay stamp duty for, let's say, $250, 250 INR, which a stamp is not available for that. So what happens in a physical flow is your agent will go out, they'll get 3 stamp papers, 2 of 100 rupees and 1 of 50 rupees. Now, how do you do that in a digital flow? Either you have the option to attach multiple stamps through series, or in part to simplify that process and remove the confusion of your agent to how many stamps of what value they need to attach. What we've done is we've given the a capability of stamping stamp groups. In this, what you do is you just create a stamp group of, let's say, Karnataka 250 rupees. In this, I want to do 250 rupees stamping, and then I just add what denomination of stamps should be used for this. Now, what will happen with this is legality will automatically figure out what is the most optimal way of using stamps, individual stamps, to give you a stamp duty of 250 in that agreement, and affix it automatically to the document. So your agent will not have to figure out, okay, I need to get two stamps for 100 rupees, one stamp for 50 rupees. We'll do that on our end, but automatically on the back end. All you need to do is tell us this is the stamp duty that I need to pay for this kind of document. So how do you use these stamps, be it a single stamp or a stamp group? So whenever you're running a document via legality, let's say I'm running a loan agreement. So this is a sample loan agreement. All you need to do is simply just toggle on this, use stamps. Now, if I want to fix, let's say 250 rupees stamp duty, I use the stamp group and I can use the stamp group I just made. But for the sake of this demo, let's say I just want to attach a single stamp. And I'll pick Haryana, which is one of the non-NESL states, because in NESL state, how you do it, Anshul is going to again show you in a couple of minutes. If you're using revenue stamps or want to use revenue stamps, it's the same thing. You just enable it. You select the series where it is stored and how many revenue stamps you want to affix to it. So yeah, I've attached a stamp for Haryana to this document, and I click on next. This is a sample loan agreement. You can fill this data directly through this dashboard, or you can integrate in your LOS LMS and pass the data through that. So next step is just adding who you want this document to sign. So I want to sign this document, and we offer 15 plus ways how you can e-sign. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to do a virtual sign because that's the fastest. If you want to enable, you can also enable security features if you want, but we're not going to do that for this demo. So I click on next. So this is your fully stamped digital loan agreement. If you'll see, this has a stamp serial number, this has a legend printed to it, and this is where my signature is going to appear. And in this, if you'll see, there is also a unique ID that we've given. And on each page of the document after it, we're giving the stamp serial number, which was available here, and a stamp document ID, so that you can track later on where this, when we send you the physical stamp, for which document this stamp was for. You don't have to like worry about, okay, this is the agreement, where is my stamp? It's going to be much easier this way. So I'll just send it. Once this gets sent, I'll show you how the signer sees it. Okay, so they'll get this e-sign link, they'll click on it, and they'll open this document. First thing they'll see is the digital stamp with the legend, stamp serial number. Then they'll see the document and they'll click on proceed. I'll have to enter OTP because this is a virtual signature where you require OTP. So just give me a second. So yeah, I'll just quickly do this e-sign. I'll click on proceed, give my e-sign consent and sign this document. Now I'll just show you how this stamp looks after the document has been signed. So yeah, I'll download this document and I'll download the audit trail for this. This will automatically go to the signer once they sign the document, be it on email, SMS, or WhatsApp, however you want to send it to them. So this is the signed document. If you'll see, my signature appears automatically on the stamp as well as on each page of the agreement. You can change this location however you want. So we can help you with that. And for each document that you sign that is stamped, you will also see the audit trail, which will clearly state the stamping details for that document. So there will be no discrepancy between what you're creating, sending, and then getting signed when you need to prove that this document was executed with a fully compliant stamp. With that, the in-house stamping demo comes to an end. Aditya, is there anything?
Yeah. So just wanted to recap the five. If you can reshare the stamp, Shubhesh. Just wanted to recap quickly the five, just touch base back to the five requirements we mentioned, legal requirements. One is the defacement. So the legend you see here is physically printed. So the physical stamp paper will have the exact same legend, right? So there's no discrepancy. The actual stamp paper we procure from government authorized vendors. So there's no discrepancy there. First party name is mentioned. And more importantly, we tie the stamp paper to the unique document, right? As Shubhash mentioned, the unique ID purpose, where you have the unique ID physically on the legend, and that unique ID reflects on the document itself. It shows indisputably and shows in the audit trail as well for the document, creates a tight chain of custody saying that, look, this specific stamp paper is used for this specific document. There's no scope of it, like after the document is executed, for reuse of that stamp paper, which is the ultimate purpose of that compliance requirement. So the system is airtight there. So that's just tying it back to the compliance requirements we discussed earlier, right? So this in the demo, of course, this is not an actual stamp paper, it's a demo stamp paper. But you will get, of course, an actual stamp paper, and you will get it physically sent to you as well, which will be exactly identical to this, because this will be a scanned version of the physical one we are sending to you, complete with the actual legend itself. Right. So this is our in-house stamping service, in-house stamping system, of course, and this will require you to maintain an inventory. Of course, if you don't want an inventory, that's where NeSL comes in. So we have a partnership with NeSL, and you can do inventory-less stamping via NeSL through Legality as well. So we just wanted to bring in Anshul to show you a quick demo of how that service works.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm from the product team in here at
Anshul,
Legality.
you're on mute. And Shubhash, you can stop sharing your screen, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Anshul, you're still not audible. Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it
it's
better?
audible. It was
Okay,
something on my end. Sorry.
no
Go
worries.
ahead.
All right, I'll quickly share my screen. I hope you can see my screen now. So Shubhesh showed us how the legalities BharatStamp can be leveraged for the states and where you are and how you can purchase those stamps and how you can sign using those stamp papers. And now I'll show you there's another way, as Patel mentioned, that you can also sign using NeSL stamps. You can also leverage them in the states that NeSL is available. So the steps are quite clear. I'll show you that. So, of course, you can use your workflows and API integrations for that. For this purpose, I'll show you the interface-based journey. So first, I'm required to upload a document. Shubhesh showed how you can use our pre-existing templates, or in case you want to upload a PDF file, you can also do that, like I've done it here. Then there's this option for enabling NeSL stamping in this part of the screen. So you can enable it. By doing so, you tell the system that you want NeSL stamping process to be used. Let me also, yeah. So now I've added this, I've added the document. Now let's move to the next screen. So as showed us that you can add invitees, so the same process here. I want NeSL stamping. So in this case, I also want the signing to get done from NeSL. So I'll enable this. In this option, I can also specify what are the number of NeSL stamps that I want. Whether I want 1, 2, 3 stamps, I can do that here. Let's say I just want one stamp, and then I move here. Now on this screen, I'm required to add all those details that NeSL requires as an IU. NeSL also acts as an information utility in addition to providing e-stamping and e-signing services. So there are certain fields that are required by NeSL. For example, loan number. These can be your unique number for that particular loan. Which state is this particular loan application file is for, rate of interest, etc. So there are multiple ways of filling this form. One is to simply pass these values through your API flows. You can do that. Another way that you can do this is, apart from filling these fields manually, you can simply upload an Excel file. So I have a sample file prepared here. This is for individual lending cases. So I have filled certain values here, and here I can specify that state that I want for stamping is Delhi. Similarly, I can enter other values like tenure, sanction amount, and all of that. And now let's zoom in into stamp details. So first I'm required to mention the first party and second party names, and also note that all these values will be part of the stamp paper when it'll get generated, and I'll show you that in a minute. So here I've added first party as ABC Bank, second party as my name, and then I can also specify what is the stamp duty amount that I'm looking for. IGRA state consideration price, based on what is the consideration price, stamp duty is calculated, so that can also be entered here. And in case I want to add certain description of document that should appear on stamp paper, that I can also specify here. And finally, who is going to pay for the stamp duty? Let's say the applicant, in this case Anshul, is going to pay for it. Now I'm also supposed to mention this article code. So NeSL has specified a digital article code against each article number in general. Each article number will have a unique digital article code specified by NeSL. So according to that, I can specify it. We can specify it here. So we have list of all the article codes that are relevant for Delhi, and amongst those, whichever is required, I can select them here. Now I'm required to add some additional values regarding the invitee who's also going to e-sign after the document has gotten e-stamped, the details of the signer. So I've entered those details. Mobile number and email ID is also mentioned here. These information are also used by NESL to send the notifications to. And also at the time of authentication, you will require to authenticate via OTP. So all of those details or all of those OTP related, authentication related information is passed on and communicated via the email ID and mobile number that is mentioned here. So once I take a look at it, everything looks fine and I've entered all the mandatory fields. I can submit the form. So this is a sample form that I have taken. This is where the signature will appear. And now I send it. Yeah. So now what has happened is the request has been submitted to legality. Now legality in turn is also submitting this request to NESL. So that is why it shows that it is in progress. And now we have received a successful update from NESL that this invitation is now active. So as I mentioned that NESL uses these data points to send NESL related notifications. So for example, this is the email ID I sent and I've also received an SMS on the same for the same. And from here, I can also try and sign the document. So with legality, you get branding options. You can also sign the document and stamp the document from there. Now the stamping part of the document gets done by the first signer. So the stamping is embedded with the signing journey of the first signer. So this is what we are saying. So up until now, I was acting as the sender of the document. Now I'm acting as someone who's a signer and who's also going to generate the stamp paper. To authenticate, I'll first need to add CAPTCHA. I'll come to this screen. OTP is sent to the number that I had entered in this section in the form. That's the same number. I'll wait for OTP to come. Okay, received it. So now I'm first shown the preview of the page. So it was a blank dummy file. So that is why it is looking like this. I agree. I give the consent to the platform. And now this is the eStamp section of NESL. So here all the fields that I had filled in the form, for example, first party name, second party name, ABC Bank and Anshul Gauri was what I had filled then, document name, and then stamp duty amount. This is the same amount that I had entered. So I can see all of that, and currently it shows the eStamp status as pending. So to get the eStamp process started, I'll click on this button, proceed with eStamp. And now this is how fast it is. Automatically the stamp paper got generated and got affixed on top of this dummy document that I had created. It also contains the certificate number so that the document can be tied back to the stamp paper. And in addition, I can see the first party name, second party name, duty, paid the duty, what is the stamp duty amount, what is the description of document, who purchased the document. So all the information that we had entered, NESL used SHCIL or eGRAS to get that stamp paper generated and affixed on top of the document. So it seems all good. So I can close the window. And now stamping part is done. Now the next part is to just simply e-sign the document. I'll quickly do that. I'll give the consent here. There are 4 options to e-sign: OTP, biometric, token based, and now face auth also. I'll use OTP. I'll e-sign the document now. Now I'm taken to the ESP page, and here I'm quickly going to enter the Aadhaar number. Just a second. Give the consent, request OTP. So now the number linked with this Aadhaar will receive the OTP. Received it. Yeah, and I'll e-sign the document. E-stamping journey is embedded in the e-signing journey, and the signature got applied. So document is signed in this case. And now let's see how does this look for the sender of the document. So once the document is signed, it is no longer active, it is now signed, and when I click on document, I see that the stamp paper is affixed on top of the document with the stamp, with this original document that I had, and I can also verify that the signature is here. So this is how the NESL e-stamping journey does as part of e-signing journey. So I'll stop the recording.
Great. Thanks so much, Anshul. So quickly reshare the deck. So as I mentioned, we've prepared a checklist for everything which we've discussed in this session, something you can use to evaluate. We have audited our process against this. We've left it blank in case you're using something else. We'll share this checklist with you. You can use it to evaluate whatever stamping system you're using or that you're building, right? Again, this is just for non-NESL. For NESL, exclusive NESL use, you don't actually need this checklist, right? So this is a checklist which we'll be sharing with you along with the recording. If you can go to the next slide. Since 2016, we've digitized more than 20 million stamps, 99.95% average uptime, and more than 23 lakh digital revenue stamps. So if you are interested in stamping, you're doing physical stamping, you're interested in either I'm interested in switching to digital stamping, consider Legality BharatStamp. If you can go to the next slide. We have our in-house stamping service and we have service via NESL, right? So absolutely every way to stamp in India is available through Legality under one platform, right? And we're doing many implementations for both of this right now. As an aside, we've also just launched our new category of product, Consent In, which is a product that helps you comply with new DPDP Act and other privacy requirements, right? And along with the recording, we will also share 2 playbooks useful for those of us, and a lot of you are with lending use cases, so this will be useful for you. We'll share these 2 links, 2 playbooks about building RBI compliant gold loan digital paperwork flows and building RBI compliant digital KFS flows. In case you want weekly updates about regulatory updates, about latest product updates, or want to be updated about case studies from other lenders or companies, or want to be updated about events like this webinar, do scan this QR code and sign up for our weekly WhatsApp or email facility. At max once a week, we share with you some update that's useful to you. So with that out of the way, thank you so much for joining today. We'll take questions now. So I think a few people had their hands raised. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll give you mic access. In case you don't want mic access, please ask your questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer it. So yeah. And in case you have any questions or feedback about the webinar, you can reach out to Shubhesh or I. Shubhesh will just drop our contact details in the box. Thank you. Again, thank you for showing up Friday afternoon. If you have any questions, please, we will be online here for the next 5 minutes. We'll be online for longer as well. Yes, so we are receiving some questions now. So first question is actually a 2-parter. All right. So just give me 30 seconds to read it. I'll read it and then I'll read it out to you guys. So the question is, there's 2 scenarios, right? One is in case where there is an original loan amount of 10 lakhs and the loan agreement is executed with stamp duty. And post signing, there are changes in the rate of interest with the same loan. So does the loan agreement have to be, so the loan agreement has to be executed again, right? With changes. Is the old stamp paper valid? That's the first scenario. Second scenario is in case where the earlier loan agreement is executed with say a 10 lakh loan amount and post execution, there is an enhancement of loan amount, thereby incurring additional stamp duty. Will difference of stamp be valid? So I'll address both scenarios separately. Although both these scenarios, ultimately, what I am going to tell you right now is my opinion on this. Fundamentally, whatever process you choose for both these scenarios has to be signed off by your legal team, right? I'm just going to reason it out from my knowledge of stamping law and like from first principles, right? So in the first case, there's a fresh document, fresh instrument being executed. There's changes in the rate of interest. There's essentially a fresh contract being executed, right? And stamping and stamp paper applies on an instrument, right? The stamp law does not see that, okay, it's a separate document, but it's actually the same transaction. Stamp law has no nuance. It does not actually account for these things. It's very simple. Stamp paper must be affixed on every instrument that is being executed, right? So for the first scenario, the old stamp paper is not valid because it's a separate instrument, right? You're essentially executing a fresh loan contract. Again, as I said, stamp law does not take into consideration things like, okay, but it's practically the same. It's the same transaction. The stamp law, the incidence of stamp is not on the transaction between you and the borrower. It is on the instrument that is being executed between you and the borrower, right? So that's scenario one. Scenario two, there's a fresh enhancement of loan amount, thereby incurring additional stamp duty. You will need to get, as far as I know, you paid the initial stamp duty. You will need to get a fresh stamp paper which covers the differential stamp duty. The stamp, as long as you're not executing a fresh loan amount, a loan agreement. So if you're executing a fresh loan agreement or a fresh loan document, the stamp paper is valid for that fresh execution, right? So even if it's an addendum, for example, that you're executing afresh, you will need a new stamp paper on that addendum. The actual amount, there's two approaches, that you pay the entire amount of the entire loan, or you pay the amount that is for the difference that is being executed via the addendum. This you should ask your legal team, but you will need a fresh stamp paper on that addendum that you execute, right? Whether it's a difference of stamp or not, I don't want to venture into this, because this is strictly something we do not venture into, because this is fundamentally a determination that has to be made by our legal team. We will help you operationalize whatever decision you choose, but the legal call on what is that stamp duty payable needs to be by our legal team. Sure. Anand, I think we've given you mic access also, so you can ask follow-up.
Hi, Shubhashish.
Hey, Anand.
Yeah. My
Aditya here.
query,
Yeah.
first query, I'm not able to clear it out. This query is starting that after loan agreement execution, we have made some changes in the sanction terms. There may be rate of interest, there may be anything else. So loan agreement need to be executed again. Then you are saying that stamp duty we have paid is not valid. We have to pay additional duty.
Yes. So the stamp duty. So actually, Azima, also, if you can stop sharing the screen, we don't need the on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Anand, yes, the stamp duty, if you see stamp law, applies on instrument. It does not apply on transaction. So if your loan terms are changing, right, with the rate of interest changing, you're essentially, the agreement you're executing is of a fresh loan term. So
Yeah.
as far as we know, that's the new instrument. And stamp duty happens on the instrument, not on the transaction. And that's just how the law is, right? And so a strict reading of the law is that you're
No,
right.
but
Like on a practical standpoint, it's the same transaction. You're doing a modification. You've changed the rate of interest, right? But the stamp law is very strict. Like the stamp law is not, it's blind to nuance. It simply says that is this a loan instrument? Oh, yes, it is a loan instrument. Has it been stamped before? No, it's not been stamped before. Stamp it based on the amount.
And the second scenario,
Yeah.
when the earlier loan was of 10 lakhs, we have signed the documents, and after this execution, customer require 11 lakhs. So I have to pay stamp duty only 1 lakh additionally.
So Anand, this I would actually refer it back to your internal team. Like we don't strictly give determinations of what would the stamp duty be. See, ultimately, yes, I'm guessing you'll be executing an addendum, right? For this agreement. Like you won't just be giving the 1 lakh without.
Fresh agreement.
So this is a bit of a thorny, tricky issue, because if you're executing, say, an addendum of the loan on top of the loan agreement, right? There's an existing loan agreement, there's an addendum agreement being added to the loan agreement. Then the stamp duty for the addendum will be based on the value of the addendum, right? Because it's on the value of the instrument. And there would be a fresh stamp paper there.
Let me clear again. Loan amount is sanctioned for 10 lakhs. Today, when we go to the customer for signing the loan agreement, he signs it out. And after tomorrow, he comes, I require 11 lakhs. So earlier loan agreement is invalid. We have to execute a separate loan agreement, new one. So it will be of 11 lakhs.
So Anand, actually, this is a systemic thing. So in a physical process, you would have to get a new stamp paper, right? Because you have purchased the old stamp paper for the old loan agreement. Now you're executing a revised loan agreement, right? Same thing as first scenario. The instrument is changing. So in a physical stamp process, you would need to actually purchase a new stamp paper. In a digital stamp process, if you noted, reason 4, right, which was a blockage, revenue leakage.
Yeah.
In a digital stamp process, you can avoid this if the stamping system says that, look, the customer gets the loan agreement to sign, right? Let's say come to your branch, the e-sign link is created, they're seeing the agreement, they're like, no, I want 11 lakhs. No one has signed the agreement yet. In a digital process, reason 4 that we mentioned, right, Azima, if you can share that on screen, you need a system where if the signer drops off, in this case, it's a drop off, right? Because it's like, we need to revise the loan term and give me 11 lakhs instead of 10 lakhs. The stamp that is affixed before signing can go back into the inventory and be reused. So essentially, you're not incurring that cost for the stamp paper, right? So in a digital process, you would have to build such a stamping system to ensure that as long as no one signs the agreement, the stamp that is pending on the document can go back and we can now issue a fresh agreement and get a stamp issued. So in a digital process, you can actually work around this without getting into the legal opinion of does it actually have additional stamp duty? Because as far as I know, in a physical process, yes, you would actually have to duplicate the stamp duty. It would be a cost implication, right? Because it's a separate instrument. As I said, stamp law is blind to nuance. It is levied on an instrument, and if you're executing a fresh instrument, it's a fresh stamp paper, right? In a digital process, what you're actually mentioning, right, the cost implication is one of the 5 reasons why e-stamping fails to scale often is this, right? Because if this happens, like what happens in the cost implication, you can consider a digital stamping system where the inventory, like the stamp gets reversed as long as no one signs, right? So in your scenario, if someone comes, customer like, no, it's not 10 lakhs, it should not be 10 lakhs, should be 11 lakhs. We're like, okay, we'll cancel the signing link. Stamp goes back. We'll issue a fresh agreement. Stamp comes back, right? You're not incurring any cost there. Yeah. Was that clear? Happy to take it offline, Anand, also, in case you want to dive deeper into it. We've received one more question. Yeah, Vijayanand, we've given you mic access, so feel free to ask your question. Zima, you can stop sharing the screen for now. Yes. Yeah, you're unmuted, so you can ask your question.
No, got it.
No, Vijayanand, similar name. Mr. Vijayanand has raised his hand, so Mr. Vijayanand, you can ask your question. You've dropped it in the Q&A box. If one stamp is allocated, can we not hold the same stamp till the case gets booked, right? Yeah, so Shubhash, if you can quickly share your screen. This is conceptually correct, right? If no one has signed the agreement, and let's say the agreement is pending with the signer, that stamp is allocated to that agreement. As simple as that. But let's say you cancel that invite. As long as no one has signed, the stamp goes back, right? Yes, you're right. If I send an agreement, loan agreement, Besh, he's not signed it, he's not rejected it either. The link is still valid. Yes, until he signs, that stamp paper will remain on that digital agreement. The scenario we were talking about is where you delete that e-sign link because Shubhash has not signed, or the e-sign link has expired because Shubhash like forgot about it or didn't find it in his SMS and your validity of that link went away. Then as long as no one has signed, the stamp paper goes back. But yes, in a case where the link is still valid, and let's say Shubhash doesn't sign it tomorrow, but he signs it 5 days later and the link is still valid, that same stamp paper will remain on the document, right? We were talking about a scenario where that link itself is deleted or gets expired. But the link is not deleted or not expired, that allocated stamp remains on the agreement, right? We do not tamper or influence that kit that has gone out to the signer unless it is deleted or expired. Hope that answers your question. Feel free to ask a follow-up as well.
I'll just clarify this, how it works on the dashboard once. So if you'll see, what is waiting for others are all the links that we are waiting for somebody to sign. So there is this one document for loan agreement that I had previously created earlier in the morning. I was just testing things out. So I've not yet signed it, right? It says unsigned and my invite is still active. So the deal is not booked yet, as you said. If I go to the document, you'll see the stamp is still there and it's going to stay there like this till either I cancel the e-sign link or the signer signs it. So it's going to stay booked to this document. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Thanks, Shubhesh. So the follow-up question is, even if the link gets cancelled, can't we hold the same stamp till it gets booked? So don't worry about it. That doesn't matter in the way we built our system. Let's say you have your stamp will. So what we have is a system where, let's say you get Maharashtra 100 rupee denomination for loan agreements, consumer loan agreements, right? You have all those stamp duties. The first party name will be your organization. The second party name will be a title. It won't be a specific name, right? So even if the link gets cancelled, the stamp paper will go back into the inventory, but your inventory will have the same amount of stamp papers as it had. So next time you resend the link, a valid stamp paper will be affixed, and that document ID will reflect on the entire agreement, right? So the practical outcome is the same as the one you want, right? Fundamentally, you won't suffer a loss of stamp paper if the link is cancelled before anyone signs. The actual stamp paper, is it the same stamp paper? That concept arises in the physical stamping process where you get that stamp paper only for that transaction. And once, if it's like, if that sign does not go through, the stamp paper is used up. That does not happen in the way we built our system, right? The stamp tracking will also not be difficult because you are not allocating stamps, each stamp for a single case, right? You are allocating these set of stamps for this type of agreement. After the stamp is actually affixed, you have an MIS report, you have full tracking on the dashboard, you have easy searchability on which stamp was used for which agreement after the document is executed, along with the physical copy we send you for the inventory. I think for this also, we're happy to dive deep into the process offline, because I think here we'll unpack the entire stamping process for you and show you how exactly this works, because we are doing this for more than 500 organizations, and actually tracking is easier for them now with the system that we built, right? So happy to take this offline because I understand the apprehension you have. Just rest assured that the way we built a system ensures that doesn't happen, right? Ensures there is full tracking and you don't actually have to deal with the hassle which you have to deal with now, saying, okay, this one stamp paper for this transaction which got cancelled, where is it? I need to retake it again. You don't have to deal with all of these things in the way we built a system, right? It's a system where you don't actually have to pay attention. It automatically resolves all these conflicts and ensures you have a full track of which stamp was used where, right? So yeah, let's take this offline because I think we'll go very deep into the system and share with you how we've done it for other organizations. In the mail we'll send on Monday, we'll also specifically answer this question and give a written response as well, which will go into a lot more detail. Right. Any other questions? Please ask in the Q&A. And again, in case some question arises after the webinar, you can reach out to us at any time. I'm repasting the link, our contact details in the chat box. So please feel free to reach out to us in case something strikes you later, or reply to the email. So as I said, by Monday end of day, we'll share the recording, we'll share the deck, and we'll share written answers to the questions on this call, as well as a few other FAQs that we often receive. Thank you so much for joining. We will be doing more webinars on e-stamping and generally about RBI compliance and paperless processes soon. So stay tuned. And yeah, thank you for joining.